you're cheating people of who you really are. When you are mimicking someone else, they already taken. I say it all the time. Don't try to be me. I'm already taken.
Right,
you
right.
cannot be
Absolutely.
me. So what I say to myself, when they called me for who I am.
Amen.
So when I get up there, I'm not going to be nobody else. You understand? That's how I protect
Drop the mic.
Just like when you called me, I said, did Jackie know who she called?
Girl, I do know who I called.
You know who you called.
Welcome back to the Jacqueline Renee Show, and I am your host, Jacqueline Renee. I am super excited that we were able to bring Pastor Portia back on. We had such an awesome time at our last episode, and so I brought her back so we can have another conversation. Y'all, she crazy.
Thank you for having me back.
And we are going to still have a great time talking today about having a voice and not an echo. Let me just tell you, Pastor Portia, I actually have that in my office. I have to keep reminding myself, have a voice. Don't be an echo. In other words, don't be silent. Have something to say.
Yes.
And so, Pastor Portia, I'm telling you, I'm just super excited. We're going to get into this conversation because I know there's some pastors' wives out there that is probably saying, man, I don't have a voice, you know, or nobody's listening to me. Listen, Linda. Listen, Linda. Listen, Linda. We are super excited just to have this conversation again with Pastor Portia. Before we start, I have written something down here. Okay. It says, God didn't call you to be a copy.
Yeah.
He called you to be a voice or original.
Original.
So let's talk about stepping into your unique calling, your authentic calling.
Yes.
Of who you are as a pastor's wife by having that voice and not an echo. So Pastor Portia, what is the difference between leading with originality or mimicking others? Let's talk about this.
Oh my goodness. This is a very, very unique but important topic to talk about, because I feel like, especially for the younger pastors' wives, maybe those who are just getting in it, like we ended our last show. Honestly, I believe, like for me, I'll just tell my own story. Not knowing I was going to be a pastor's wife or even a pastor at a young age, I had a mark in my life, which happened to me. My pastor is Apostle Cynthia Brazelton, and she was always before me. And so, of course, naturally, when you're always listening to your pastor, always watching your pastor, you are going to tend to pick up what you hear, how they do things, because especially when they're a great model.
Yes.
Now, she was a good model.
Yes.
You understand?
Still is.
Awesome model. Awesome model. So I would watch her. I would listen to her. I would watch how she treated her husband, right? I would watch how she treated the women in the church. And that became my mark. And so I might have started there with my mark. I might have started sounding like her, looking like her.
Because you did.
I did. Until, she was my mark until I found my own.
Yes.
And it may take you a minute to find your authentic voice. It really does. I would say that to find your authentic voice is being made in the image and likeness of God, right? To always mimic him and always put your voice to what he said. So I will be honest and say, I always say to people, the copyright is in heaven. Like, that's the originality. But as long as we are giving voice to what he said, I'm telling you, you'll find your voice that way. Because the word might say, so it's so pregnant, right? It may say one thing to me, but one thing to you, and that's okay. It's okay. It's just my version. It's like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They're telling the same story, different ways because of who they are in their experience. And so I would say to the younger people, find your mark. Find the person that you respect and love. But in discovering them, you will discover your own voice.
And while you were talking about that, it reminded me of David when he was about to kill Goliath. He basically told them, I can't wear your armor.
Yes. Yes.
I can't put that armor. It's too heavy.
Yes.
That's not me.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and so finding your voice is like that.
Yes.
It's not me to put on something that's yours.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit. It's too heavy. I can't shoot the right way. I can't hit the right way.
Yes.
With me copying or mimicking what you are doing.
Yes.
And so, you know, in the body of Christ, you do see a lot of people are copying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they'll take your your book
In half.
and put, you know, Audacity. Be Audacity.
I have a book called I'm Not That Woman.
Right.
And this lady took literally everything and then she reframed it to say I'm not that kind of woman.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
see,
I'm telling you.
this is what I'm saying.
Yes. Yes.
This is what I'm saying. And see, that lets me know that she's not in the prayer room hearing from God for her own originality.
Yes.
And originality amongst pastors' wives, amongst us as children of God. God, you know, he may give us something similar.
Yeah.
But he's always speaking, and that's what we fail to know, that he's always speaking, and, you know, we can get something original. We don't have to be a copycat.
We don't. You're cheating the world of you. You're really cheating your listener and you hear who you are. And I think the originality comes out of our experiences.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? No one has your fingerprint.
Yes.
So, and no one has your voice print. They don't. And so your voice will come out of what you lived, what you experienced, your prayer room. And so you're cheating people of who you really are. When you are mimicking someone else, they already taken. I say it all the time. Don't try to be me. I'm already taken.
Right,
you
right.
cannot be
Absolutely.
me. Be the best you. But I hope you encountering me causes you to be the best you.
My God,
Yeah.
that is so good.
Yeah.
So how do you cultivate confidence? Tell the pastors' wives, how do you cultivate confidence in your own divine assignment?
Ooh, my confidence. And we all know, right? Our confidence has to come from God, like 100%. But I cultivate confidence, I'm being honest, practicing. I'm a practicer. You know how I say, what is it? Allen Iverson was like, you talk about practice? Practice is important. Like, I practice I practice speaking. I study to show myself approved, because I think you're most bold and you show up the most confident in your knowing.
Yes.
When you don't know something, when you're unsure of something, you kind of come off like not confident. But I am a professional in making sure I know something, and I don't have to know everything. Just the one thing, or what God's called me to do, or my lane, or what's my message. Because I think everybody has a message.
Yes, they do.
You know what I'm saying? I think God has called everybody to, no matter what you are assigned to preach or what you're assigned to do, that message is going to come out. I believe my message is helping people know who they are. And so no matter what I have to do in life, that's going to come out of me. But I'm strong in that. And so because I'm strong in that, and I've practiced it and I've studied it, that's where the confidence comes in, because I know who I am.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to be anyone else. When you are acting, there'll be no confidence.
That's true.
And so I don't like acting.
Right, right. You like being your originality.
Yes, just being the original.
Yes, absolutely. It reminds me too of a lot of pastors' wives. Well, let me just say, not only pastors' wives, even churches. We basically see a lot of them trying to do the same thing. For instance, you feed the homeless.
Yes.
You know, I will, be in contact with a pastor's wife that's trying to feed the homeless.
Right.
You know, they feel like this is what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
Because Pastor Portia and them, they doing it.
Right.
Right. And so it gets them discombobulated because they feel like I should be doing what the church down the street should be doing. So I believe that, no, we should not copy, what has God commissioned and missioned you to do as a pastor and a pastor's wife. You can't, think that because everybody else is doing it, it's going to fit your ministry. Talk about that.
Like, what's your vision?
Exactly.
What is the vision God gave you And you've got to know what God has called you to. I remember, you guys remember that show, The Undercover Boss?
Yes.
And I remember watching that and seeing how much of an impact they were making in people's lives and community. And I remember getting frustrated. I remember saying, church should be doing this. My church should be doing this. And I was saying that to a good friend of mine. She's like, no, God called them to do that. What did God call you to do? You getting frustrated looking over there. They have that grace. You step outside of what God called you to do, and there'll be no grace for it. There'll be no provision.
That part.
And you out here bankrupt because you're just trying to do something good that somebody else is doing, but you're not doing what you're called you to do. Maybe your ministry is just a teaching ministry.
Yes.
Because we need teaching ministries.
Yes.
Because there's some ministries that don't teach well.
Yes.
But they feed the homeless well.
Yes.
Right? Understand?
Yes.
And so I think when you stick to your vision, what God called you to do, that's how men are drawn unto you.
Yes, yes.
Really, I do think that, okay, God will line up people for you. I always say, who are your people? That's some of the problem. You got people there that's not really your people.
That's it.
And that's why they a problem. Because they're not really your people. But when you got to call men to a vision, he will. So you have to stick to your vision. What did God tell you to do?
And that is so key, Pastor Portia. What did God tell you to do?
Yes.
And, you know, pastor's wife and pastor, if you listen, pastor, just go back into your prayer closet and just ask God, you know, what am I supposed to do in this ministry? Let me just say, COVID messed a lot of us up, you know. And so we're having to revamp, rearrange, rebrand, all of these different things in ministry. But still, you have an appointed mission from God that God has called you to do. Don't get it mixed up with your girlfriend who's a pastor's wife. You know, understand your passion, what God has put within you and your husband, and go back, you know, because so many pastors' wives, I see them, they're frustrated because it's not working. Why isn't it not working? It's not because it's not your assignment, that God has given unto you. So again, let me just ask you this. Guard your uniqueness in a world full of comparisons. How do you guard that, Pastor? Because, you know, you can be a little crazy, but I love her. I mean, but I love that about you.
And look, it's so funny. I didn't know that. I did not know that until I got amongst the crowds. Until God called me to higher platforms, I didn't know I was different. I didn't until you start hearing what people say, like, oh, you edgy. And I'm like, all right. And so, you know, I would take it and then I would brand it. So one of my brands was, I'm not edgy, I'm gonna push you over the edge. I got that from what y'all said. I was gonna take it and maximize. I'm like, oh, I'm edgy? No, I'm gonna push your tail over the edge. So, like, I do protect that.
Okay.
I do. I protect who I genuinely am because I truly believe we're too unique to be compared fairly. I can't be compared to you. I got different goods. And I protect my goods because God gave me these goods. We're different. I mean, even God, there's 3 in 1. All of them have a different lane. Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. You know what I'm saying? He loves diversity. And so I love diversity. I don't think I could be in a company or a group of pastors' wives just like me. That would irritate me. I think iron sharpens iron.
Absolutely.
And I think that we should learn how to celebrate our differences. Even in ministry. If you had a conference, you're not going to bring in, think about it, you're not going to bring in the same type of person for every session. No, when you're trying to minister to the masses, you're going to say, oh, give me her, she's a powerhouse. Give me her, she's a teacher. Give me her. And so you call for who they are. So what I say to myself, when they called me for who I am.
Amen.
So when I get up there, I'm not going to be nobody else. You understand? That's how I protect
Drop the mic.
Just like when you called me, I said, did Jackie know who she called?
Girl, I do know who I called.
You know who you called?
I called Pastor Portia. Oh my God, this has been amazing though. It has. I mean, just even our friendship. You know, I'm kind of more reserved in certain areas. You know, they call me the purpose pusher. And I'll push you, you know, like you said, you're going to kick them.
Can I tell y'all something about y'all wonderful host? It's a surprise though, and it's a pleasant surprise. Because like she said, she shows up very reserved, but it's not until you get close you getting pushed. You're like, I didn't know you were this person. Like, you're like that silent storm. But I love that about you. I love it. We don't see you coming. We don't see her coming, but she comes like, okay. I love
yes. Well, you know, it truly is the Lord's doing, because I used to be very quiet. But, you know, somebody told me I was a gangster in the spirit.
Yes.
And I'm like, a gangster? What is a gangster in the spirit? You know, but to God be the glory, because like I said, we different.
Yes.
But we can get along. You know, some pastors' wives, I'm telling you, Pastor Portia, they do not get along. And they don't even know you.
That's too much energy.
They don't even know you. They don't know who you are.
Yeah.
They may, you know, seen what you've done and different things like that. But because they probably hear from different other people, you know, that's why I never look at someone and judge them. Because I don't know what they may be experiencing, what they may be going through, especially pastors' wives. You know, I want them to be their original, authentic self. You know, who are you is what I'm asking them. Who are you? You know, what do you have that is laying dormant, you know, that God wants to use? And like you said, we got to push it out of them.
Push them out of it.
We got to push it out of them so they can understand that they're unique. They are chosen by God. They don't have to be like anybody else. They need to just be themselves. If it's quiet, if they are a quiet storm, if they're quiet and, you know, just don't want to be pushed, you know, if they are loud, because you do have some loud ones that are out there too. But whatever it is, we want them to be who God has called them to be. So Pastor Portia, this has been
so good.
This has been amazing. We had to bring you back.
Thank you.
So we can talk about that voice, being a voice and not an echo.
How do you handle people in tough, trying situations where people are like trying you as a woman? But you are also in this position as a pastor's wife.
Got it.
How do you navigate that? What's your
How do I not embarrass my husband?
That part.
I call it, you know, being a pastor's wife, I typically, when I'm talking to other pastors' wives, I'll say you have to learn the art of playing in traffic. I think good leaders know how to play in traffic, and people are just traffic, right? So you gotta know when to get on, when to get off. You've got to know when to yield. You need to know when to slow down. You got to know when to follow. And so there are a lot of times people will try you. And you've got to know that people are going to try women. Women have had beefs with each other since, I mean, you think of all the women in the Bible, there was so much conflict. So you have to know how to handle conflict. And the one thing I tell people, the first thing I tell people is don't take everything personally. Just because they're trying you, a lot of times it's a them problem, not a you problem. And a lot of times we approach things because you think they're attacking you personally. No, they got issues. They're insecure. They're jealous. All of that is a them problem. So you always have to remember you're a minister first. How do I minister to them? How do I help them? A lot of times I won't even deal with the issue. I'll deal with them. Jesus did that a lot. You notice Jesus didn't answer people's questions. He never answered people's questions.
That's true.
They would ask questions and he would just totally ignore their questions. Even when he gave people, you know, assignments like Moses, like Jeremiah, and they would say things like, I'm too young, I can't talk. He never even spoke to that. He stuck to what he was telling them to do. So I use that model when I'm dealing with messy women. I use that model.
That's good. Oh my God. Messy women.
There's a lot of them.
Oh my God. And that is so true. That is so true. So my answer to that is I'm just thinking about trying to, like Pastor Portia was saying, trying to make sure that you are not the person that they want you to be. Okay? Because some of them will kind of push a button just to make you get out of character. Let me just say that. They would try to push a button to make you get out of character, especially women. Like she said, messy women. Every church have them. Everyone. And so you, as the pastor's wife, you have to continue to remind yourself who you are. You know, especially when you have women that come into your ministry that, you know, their motive is wrong. You know, their motive is to get close to the pastor. You know, by all means necessary. I've had that happen several times in our ministry, but I never let them see me sweat.
Yeah.
You know, you can't let them.
I'm gonna come.
You can't let them see you sweat. Yeah. But you have to basically keep your eyes on them.
Yes.
You know, you got to keep them in prayer and different things like that. You can't get out of character, as I said before, because of you don't want to show them that you see them, but you want them to recognize that you know what's actually going on concerning what they're trying to do. It's a lot of messiness sometimes that comes into the ministries, especially with women. And I'm not going to say just all women, men too. You know, like my husband say, well, the men after you too. And so, you know, I have to be real and honest about that. Yeah, okay. But, you know, we as my husband and myself, we have to continue to hold that holiness about who we are and not give in to what the enemy wants us to. And so many pastors, I'm just going to say it, they give into it.
They do.
They give into these women that come into their ministries that have the wrong motive. They see it, you know, but because of, I guess, the lack of whatever at home, you know, whatever, if they're trying to have a fantasy or whatever, I'm just going to make it plain and be real about it. They fall into these traps. And so, you know, as the pastor's wife, this is what causes the pastor's wives to have to, you know, fight for their family, fight for their faith, fight for these areas that, you know, that the enemy is trying to actually bring discord, bring these things into the ministry, not just the ministry, but in their marriage.
Can I say this too? I try to encourage pastors' wives to be a woman. There's a difference between a woman and a female. A woman is a position, and you have a position in that place. A female is just a gender assignment. And a lot of times we're just being out here being females, right? Just fighting like cats. But a woman, when you step in your womanhood as a woman of God, you hold a position. People won't even come for you when you keep just being the woman God has called you to be. They won't even, that stuff falls. I'm telling you, when you step in your authority as a woman, that stuff, they may try you once, but because you live in that authority, you don't even have to say nothing.
That's true.
You carry.
That's true.
You carry. It's almost like I wish you would. You carry that. You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
But then when you downgrade yourself and just be a female and you get into all of those, you know, fights and all those arguments, you come down to their level, you now open yourself up to stuff you don't want to open yourself up to. So, and that takes some time. It does take some time to just grow in who you are. It takes time at home, having courageous conversations with your husband. It takes time just, you know, knowing the women you're pastoring and knowing yourself. So I would say be a woman, not a female.
What is the distinct differentiation between a voice and an echo, and how can the listener identify which one they're operating in?
That's a good question.
What's the distinction? I can use a Bible story.
Yes.
And I hope it's not the long way around, but it's in the conversation of preparation, right? And so if you look at the parable of the 10 virgins, 5 were wise, 5 were foolish. And when the bridegroom came, the distinction, they all looked the same. before midnight.
That's good.
They all looked the same before midnight. Good. But midnight, there was a distinction, and the distinction was preparation. I had an oil.
My God.
I didn't have to go get an oil. I had to go listen to someone. I didn't have to go, see how they dress and see how they present. I had an oil when nobody was looking. I already had my oil. You understand? And for the 5 wives, I learned that you've got to be careful. God, even as Christians, God didn't call you to give your oil to everybody. Because if you look at that story, you think, oh my God, why didn't they share their oil? That's the Christian thing to do. No. Because if you out here even dumping your oil in places you shouldn't, when the bridegroom come, you'll have no oil.
My God.
And so I think it's in a conversation of preparation. That's the distinction.
Oh my God.
That's the distinction.
That is so good.
Yeah.
That is so good. Yeah. Oh my God. I've never saw that like that.
Yes.
So mine is basically just having the authority. You know, when you have a voice, you have authority. You have power. You have say-so. If God gives it to you to have that voice, he gives you the power. He gives you the authority. He gives you to declare and decree. You know, there's a certain sound in heaven that God hears from us. My God, when we have that voice. It's a voice that he hears, you know, and if you're connected in the spirit realm, when the voice, that's just like my husband. When my husband actually calls me and says, hey, baby, guess what? If somebody else was to call me and said, hey, baby, and it wasn't my husband, I wouldn't know the voice. Okay. And so that's just like having that voice. The echo is barely heard. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes the echo may be coming through the airways, but it's not the original of what was just said. So to me, it's just having the power and authority, knowing who you are as well, that I can speak. I can speak a thing and it shall come to pass. You know, knowing, having that faith to believe that whatever God has caused me to say, that it can shift the atmosphere. It can shift things in my life. It reminds me of when we were actually at Allen Palm Park. In his presence was there for a picnic. And the rain was actually getting ready to come to rain on the picnic. And so the Lord says, speak to the rain. My voice, my voice spoke to the rain, and guess what? The rain went around us. So again, because you have that, God knows your voice, and he's going to answer what you say in the spirit realm.
Listen, the spirit realm knows your voice.
Yes,
you remember the story that says, Paul I know.
Yes.
But who are you?
Absolutely.
So the spirit realm knows the authentic voice.
Yes.
He knows the spirit, all of heaven and hell.
Yes.
Knows that authentic voice. And when you were talking about echo and the power, I thought about when something's an echo, the more it's echo, it loses its power.
My God.
You think about it. You just think about naturally when it's echo, it's like, Portia.
Yes.
It loses.
It loses
its power.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that voice don't.
That voice don't. Not the original one. So I hope you understand the distinction now.
Got it?
Awesome.
Yes.